everyone, this is Darla from crafty.yarn.owl. Welcome to a new tutorial. Now this summer top is worked top down in the round in one piece. You can use any yarn size you want, from a 1 weight to a bulky 5. All right, so I'm going to show you what yarn I used for the 1 weight I made, and then I'll show you the yarn for the actual tutorial. All right, so this is authentic hand-dyed yarn. This is yarn B. This was gifted to me by the lovely Dee from Dee's Creative Hands. Thank you so much, Dee. And this colorway is Meteorite's Delight. It's a 3.5 ounce hank, and it's 400 yards. And let's see, it is a, I know it's really tiny, super fine one, and it's 100% super wash merino wool. All right, so I used the suggested hook size, which was a 3mm. I did the chain in a 3mm. And then after, then I did the first row in a 3.5. And then I went down several rows, and then I changed to a 4, and then a 4.5, and then a 5. Now the reason I do that is to give the garment a little bit more room as you go down. It's very subtle, but it does give you a little bit more room. That's what I find. So that's what I did. So for this tutorial, what I had left from 2 skeins from 800 yards was this little tiny bit of the 1 weight. So for this tutorial, you are going to need some stitch markers. You're going to need a piece of scrap yarn that we will use as a measuring device. I mean, it's only like 1.5 feet long or something. You probably won't even need that. But that's going to help guide us when we do our underarms. Okay, I'll show you the yarn that's in the actual tutorial. Now for the actual tutorial, I used loops and threads, Eco Brights. It's 255 yards in here, 150 gram ball. This is a bulky 5. Let me find that. Bulky 5 right here. This colorway is red. Oh yes, it's red. And I used about a ball, just a little bit less than 1 ball to make the top. Now the top fits me, it's medium to large, but of course you make any size that you want. I show you in the video where to try it on and make sure it's going to fit you, and how to you know, to make sure it's going to fit you. So whatever number of chains you do will be for your size. And yeah, so what I did with the hook size is I did a 6mm for the shoulder piece, and then I started using a 6.5 as I went further down over the girls, you know, just to give them a little more room. So I'm going to use these 2 hook sizes in the tutorial. And of course you'll need your 4 stitch markers and your piece of scrap yarn, and also of course scissors and a darning needle. Remember, use any weight yarn you want, and make sure you try it on in the video where I show in the video, and yeah, you'll be good to go. All right, so let's do this. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a chain that goes across the top of your arm, across your chest, and then across your arm and all the way around the back. And we're going to close it into a circle. Okay, so well, I'm going to, we're going to make this in multiples of 2. So make a chain in multiples of 2 that's going to fit around where I showed you. So multiples of 2 means that your chain has to be divisible by 2. Okay, so I've made 6 right here, and I'm going to pull up my stitch. I'm going to put the hook into that first loop we made, that first chain, I should say. And then I'm going to go through here, and then I'm going to continue making my chain. This way our chain will stay untwisted. Okay, there's your working side of your chain. And when you get to the end of your chain, you just grab your yarn and pull it through both loops like that. And when we're done that, I'll meet you there. All right, when you've finished your chain, you want to just grab your yarn here, pull through both loops, and then chain 1. So for this first row, we are just going to make single crochets all the way around. So what you want to do is pull it apart a little bit, because the first chain you want to go into is right here. So I've chained 1, and I'm going to go in that first one with a single crochet, and then to make a single crochet in every chain after that. And you will have the same number of single crochets as you had chains. All right, I'll meet you at the end of this row. When you have your single crochet row done, you're going to slip stitch into that first single crochet you made. And then we're going to chain 1. And then we're going to go right back in that same stitch with a V-stitch. So we're going to do a double crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet in the same stitch. And then we're going to skip 1, go in the next stitch with a V-stitch, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. That's your V-stitch. And this is the repeat. All right, skip 1, go in the next stitch with your V-stitch. I'll do that again. Skip 1, go in the next stitch with your V-stitch. It's a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. So that's how it will look. I'll meet you at the end of this row. When you come to the end of the row, your V-stitch row, you'll have 3 stitches left. So skip 1, make your V-stitch in the next. And then we're going to slip stitch into the V-stitch. This was our chain 1 here, so don't really ignore that. I mean ignore that, because it's not an actual stitch. It was just to help us get up to make the V-stitch. So just kind of ignore that. Put in that first double crochet the V-stitch, just put a slip stitch on top of that. And then slip stitch right into the center of your V-stitch right here. And then chain 1. And then we're going to make another V-stitch. Make a V-stitch in the V-stitch, and in each one all the way around this round. So double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. And keep doing that. That's our repeat. Go in the next V-stitch, same thing, make a V-stitch, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Go in your next V-stitch in the center of it, do the same thing, put a V-stitch in there. Continue doing that. Make several rows. I will come back and I'll tell you how many rows I made. All right, when you have your shoulder piece, you know, the length or the width, no, it's the length of it you want. Mine is about 5 inches, and it'll be a little bit longer because we're going to do a trim around later on. You put your working yarn away over on one side because we want to keep it out of our way. So then what we're going to do with our scrap yarn is we're going to go right into a V-stitch that's around where your armpit is. You just tie that piece in there. We're going to measure how long we need our chain to be for under your arm. It's a little awkward here. Okay. All right, so we have that on there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to turn that to the back. See this working yarn? Keeping it out of our way. Okay, let me just pull this down just a little bit. Okay. So we want to be around the back. Pull this a little bit so it's around there when your arm is hung down naturally. You grab it, bring it up here to the front, and then tie it into the center of one of those V-stitches. And this is how we're going to calculate how long the chain goes under our arms to make our armholes. Now let's see, we don't want it too loose because the weight of the top is going to pull it down. Yeah, so that'll give us a guide how long we need that chain to be. So that should be about right for me. Okay, I'm going to take this off, and oh, also this, you know, pulls up as you do this. So, yeah, look, oh dear. So you, geez, you have to go make it a little shorter than what you have it here. Because yeah, you have to adjust your shoulder pieces, and so now it's hanging a little longer, but it's a guide. So I'll show you how to make the chain underneath there. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so this is our working chain right here. Our underarm is over here. So let's continue on making these V-stitches into the V-stitches. How's your weather where you are? Ooh, it's very humid here in Winnipeg. I'm just sweating right now. Oh. Okay. Okay, make the V-stitches into the V-stitches. And I'm sorry. And when you get to your, where your yarn, your scrap yarn is tied in, you want to make a V-stitch in that one. All right, so now we're going to make a chain that's going to be in multiples of 2. So I'm going to make it shorter than my guide because, well, you saw what happened. All right, so in multiples of 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When you have your chain done, you want to go to where your scrap yarn is connected here and put a V-stitch in there. I chained 20 and connected it, and it was too big, so I went down to 16 chains. Yours may be different because we're all different sizes. And then you're going to make your V-stitch where the other part of your scrap yarn is attached. And then we're going to make a V-stitch into every V-stitch all the way to the end of this row, just like we did before. This is all going to be in V-stitches. All right, continue doing that, but actually first we want to mark our other side. Just gonna put a stitch marker in there so I don't lose my stitches. And let me just look at this. All right, so that was my guide. So yeah, I made it smaller. Right, made it shorter. Okay, so then let's get rid of this. Get rid of this scrap yarn, and then we're gonna put stitch markers in under the other arm. Seems like everything takes longer when you're on camera. Oh, okay. Let me move some of this. All right. So we just even up. I mean, it's pretty simple. Just even up your V-stitches, because I made 2 over here, so you want to even up with that first one I made. Even it up. Count how many V-stitches you have under the arm. So I always start counting by where I last put my stitch in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's going to be 10. Okay. So I'll go to the other side here. We need 10. So I'm going to count back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put a stitch marker. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Of course, yours will be different again because we're all different sizes. Okay. So make sure your stitch markers are lined up there. And there we go, they're lined up. So now you're just going to keep working your V-stitches. And then here we are here. Work your V-stitches all the way across there, and then when you get to your stitch marker, make a V-stitch where that stitch marker is, make your chain, and then put a V-stitch into where your other stitch marker is. And then you'll have both chains done, and then I will show you. Well, then you continue on making your V-stitches up to this first one you made, and then slip stitch into it, and I'll show you what to do with those chains. All right, I'm up to my chain, but first we have this V-stitch. We need to put a V-stitch in there. Okay, now in our chain, we're going to put V-stitches. So we're going to skip the first chain and make a V-stitch into the next one. And that's what we're going to do along our chain. Just skip a chain right here and then put a V-stitch in the next chain. Skip a chain, put a V-stitch in the next chain. So when you get to the end of your chain, you will have one chain left. And you skip over that and put your V-stitch in your V-stitch. Okay, skip one, go in the next one. There's a V-stitch. We're going to come back around to the underarms to do something there after. Okay, skip one V, skip one V, skip one V, and then there'll be one left. Skip that one, put a V in the V. Okay. Alright, I'm at the end of that chain and I have one stitch left. Skip right over top of it and then put a V in your existing V right there. Okay, so that's what your armhole is going to look like. Continue putting V's in all the V's. And do the same under the arm on the other side, of course. And continue making V's. You can go up a hook size if you want. I mean, once you reach the girl area, if you want a little extra room, you know, you could always go up. I'm using a 6. I may go up to a 6.5. And I may even go up to a 7 near around my waist to give a little more room in the hip area. Yeah, that's what I do. So yeah, continue on making your top as long as you want to make it, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what I do around the armholes. When you've completed putting your V-stitches under your arm in that chain, you have these 2 stitch markers here. Just leave those because we're going to need them later on. Okay, so continue making the lengths of your top. Okay, here we are at the underarms. Make sure your garment is right side out. And we are going to do a border around. So I'm going to start. This is your shoulder and this is your underarm. So right in that, where we put that V-stitch there, in that chain, I'm just going to put my hook through there, pull my yarn through, and we're going to chain 1 and put a single crochet in there. Okay, can I show this a different way? Is that better? Okay, a single crochet. And then remember we had skipped one chain, so we want to put a single crochet in that chain and then a single crochet in the next where our V-stitch is into. Put a single crochet in there, then in the chain, in the next one, in the chain, okay, now in the next one where our V-stitch is in, put a single crochet, then we're going to do a decrease around this area where your stitch marker is. So we're going to do 3 single crochets together. So let's see, we're just going to space them out as evenly as possible. So find a space to put them in. Okay, pull together. Okay, now we're going to jump over to our V-stitch and put a V-stitch in there. Put a V-stitch in the next V-stitch until we get close to that stitch marker on the other side. Okay, excuse me, V-stitches in the V-stitches. And I'm still using my 6mm, the one that I started with. When I got to around the girls, I went up to a 6.5. Okay, V-stitch in the V-stitch. Okay, we're coming up to that next stitch marker. So V-stitch in the V-stitch. And by putting those 3 single crochets together, it's going to pull in, how do I describe it, the corners, I guess the corners, yeah, of your, yeah, underarm. So just place them somewhere evenly around where that stitch marker is, like we did on the other side. Pull through all 4. And then we have this side, this one on the side. So we're just going to put a couple of single crochets in that chain. Where are we at? Okay. And then I'm going to just go right into, where are we? Yes, I'm just going to make a single crochet into that chain. And then a single crochet where our V-stitches had gone into that chain. Then we'll go into that chain between, and where that V-stitch went in, the chain between. And then where this V-stitch went in, right in here, just put a single crochet, and then we're going to slip stitch into the first single crochet we made. And now I'm going to do another round. Okay, chain 1, put a single crochet in that single crochet. And we can remove these stitch markers now. Sorry, my piece was kind of sliding off the table as I was working it here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark that first single crochet so I don't lose it when I come back around. And the other stitch marker you can Where is it? Where did it go? You can remove now too, or remove it later. Okay. So here we are back at the underarm. Right, so just put single crochets in all the single crochets and V-stitches in all the V-stitches as you go around. I won't be doing any more decreases, sorry, under those. In the corners, that's what I'm trying to say. Okay, we're up to a V-stitch, so we'll just go right into that V-stitch with a V-stitch. Just keep going like that, V-stitches and the V-stitches, single crochets and the single crochets. Okay. Sorry about this thing just sliding off the table. This yarn is actually kind of slippery, or more than others. All right. Now, when you get around to the end, just slip stitch into that first single crochet you made, and then you can cut your yarn. And now we're going to go to the neckline. Remove that stitch marker. Okay, here's our neckline, or our shoulder piece. Okay, well, let me just show you the underarms here. So this is the shoulder, and you'll have your V-stitches around the top of your arm. And then underneath is just single crochets. Okay. And now we're just going to make single crochets around that top chain just to tidy it up. Now, if you want to add a border or anything anywhere, of course you can do that. I think I'm just going to leave mine plain. Alright, so I'm just going to make single crochets all the way around the neckline. Now, if you find that your sleeve piece might be a little loose on you, then possibly when you get to your, you get to your edge here, then maybe you could do like we did on the underarms, a 3 single crochet decrease, and then it may tighten it up a little bit on each side. That might help if it's a little bit loose. Yeah. But for mine, I'm just going to do single crochet all the way around. Okay, and of course, when you get to your first single crochet you made, just slip stitch into it and sew in your ends. And here we are at the end of the neckline. Slip stitch, pull your yarn through chain 1, cut your yarn off. Sew in your ends and you're done, unless you put a border. Thank you so much for joining me, and if you made this top or any of my top designs or dress designs, beach cover-up design, whatever, I would love to see pictures in my Facebook group, which is always linked below. At least, well, since I started the group, it's been linked below. I think I started over a year ago. But, yeah, I would love to see what yarn you use, what size yarn, what color, everything. We would all love to see that. All right, so thank you very much, and thank you for subscribing and sharing. I would love if you would share my videos and click like, and I'll see you again real soon. Thanks. Bye.